At this time, I'd like to call the Bowie City Council regular council meeting to order for Monday, November 7th, 2022. It is now 8:04 p.m. If everyone would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. My chair is stuff. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, could you confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a quorum this evening. In council chambers, we have Councilmember Esteve, Councilmember Wolfley, Councilmember Gardner, Councilmember Harrison, and Councilmember Ndebumadu, and Mayor Adams. Only absent is Mayor Pro Tem Boafo.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will ask if there are any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments from the council. Hearing none, we will move on to citizen participation. Madam City Clerk, do we have citizen participation this evening? At this time, could Connie Carter please come forward?
Hello.
Good evening, Ms. Carter. You just grab one of those mics and feel free.
Hello. Ooh. Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I want to specifically address the property, the Montessori school property that's on Rustic Hill Drive. And I am a resident of Rustic Hill Drive. I've been there for almost 50 years. And I was able to get the Friendship Charter, the presentation, and hi there, hi. It's nice to see everybody, and it's nice to see that we have moved away from the 80 houses. That's good. That's good. So when I was reading the charter, the presentation, I was doing bullets because I'm not going to do a long-winded speech, but I wanted to bring some things to your attention, but you may have already going to hear it. I don't know, so if I repeat yourself, then I apologize, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. Considering what Montessori was, and now we're going to have hopefully another school similar to Montessori, which is what I understand. My questions are, how many students at any one time will be at that school? How large is, taking notes real fast? Yeah, I knew you would be. Okay. How large, we're all in this together. We want to do what's best for the city, and that's what we're all for. How large will the building or buildings be? Are they going to be 1 story? Are they going to be 10 stories? I presume they're going to be very low, but that's something I think needs to be understood. Are you going to start the building? And I noticed back here under the construction area that you're going to renovate. I'll go to that one again later. Start building from the ground level, or you're using the existing buildings. In other words, are you going to take it down to the ground and then build new buildings, or are you going to use what is already there or add to it, that sort of thing? The school buses. We know school buses are going to come there. We have school buses all the time. I've almost gotten run over by them. They're wonderful. Anyway, the school buses, I don't know, because of the quantity of kids that are going to go there, how many school buses do you anticipate coming up and down the street? And I would hope that somebody has a ruler to slap on the driver's hands when they start speeding up our road. Maybe we could have some calming humps. Anyway, what are the grade levels? And I did get that answer in your presentation, K1 to 5. Okay. I guess the question would be, they've got schools already elsewhere, all over Baltimore and elsewhere. Has the council members actually gone to one of the schools and see what the buildings look like, what the schools look like, what the numbers are, in comparison to what is planned or wants to be planned for Bowie, where the Montessori property is? Because you don't want to just agree to something and then not know that it's totally different than what you had agreed to. And then, see, okay, this is a very nice presentation now. Looks good. Okay. It's a good idea for a council to visit a school similar to what will be planned for, hopefully planned for Bowie. This is where I am really, really concerned, and I really want everybody to put the listening ears on. Construction traffic. It says here, you're prepared to make an estimated $8 to $10 million investment in building a new school or renovating a former school or commercial building, and also looking at Sears. I understand that. So when you do have the construction, I think that was one of the things we wanted to be concerned about. What kind of construction was going to be coming up and down Rustic Hill Drive? How long was it anticipated to get the school up to the point where the doors are open to the students? And most importantly is the eagles. You cannot disturb the eagles. It is against the law. So I would really, really like to visit that very, very much. And then the other thing is, how much acreage with the trees do you expect to disturb in the renovation or the building of a new school? And I think that's it. Anybody have any questions of what I've said?
We haven't gotten a briefing yet.
Right? Right. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have John Teasdale.
Mayor and Council, I'm John Teasdale. I'm the Vice Chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Resolution R6222, which is on the consent agenda tonight. The Environmental Advisory Committee has been a strong advocate for maintaining the urban tree canopy in Bowie for many years. In 2012, we proposed the urban tree canopy goal of 45% that was approved in Resolution R5612, passed in that year. In 2020, EAC played a key role in developing the Climate Action Plan that calls for expanding the city tree canopy to sequester more carbon from the atmosphere. In 2013, EAC advocated for a no net loss policy for city street trees, and in 2021 for a similar no net loss policy for woodlands in the development review guidelines. Verification of our urban tree canopy was limited for many years by the inability to accurately measure the tree canopy cover. Recently, the city has obtained access to accurate remote sensing data that will provide means to measure the city urban tree canopy on a regular basis. The most recent data shows the Bowie tree canopy to be 44.1%, so we're close to, but not yet at, our 45% goal. The no net loss policy will ensure that we do not lose ground in our efforts to meet our tree canopy objectives. This policy should become a particularly important reference point when considering several development projects that have been or will be reviewed by the city and council in coming months. The innumerable benefits that tree provides to the city must be considered along with the economic gains from the development. Note that intact forests are particularly beneficial for providing ecological services compared to a fragmented tree canopy. I recently visited a Girl Scout troop in Bowie, and their greatest concern was not cutting down trees. The presence or absence of trees can be readily perceived by all Bowie residents, from the youngest to the oldest, from casual observation to measurement with the most sophisticated remote sensing technology. Adoption of the no net loss resolution by council will signal to Bowie residents an intent to protect the Bowie urban tree canopy, and more important, will signal that serious consideration is given to the implications of this policy when development and other issues come before the city are considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we will have various items.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm the president of Pointer Ridge Elementary School, and we've had the opportunity to advocate for Pointer Ridge staying open and continuing to be a vital part of the city of Bowie. There's just some questions that haven't been answered, and if there's any outlets that y'all have to get those questions answered, we would surely appreciate it. We looked at some of the recommendations according to the AP 7100, which recommends a class size of 1.22 for kindergartners and 1.25 for all other grade schools. Pointer Ridge is sitting at 20. We're sitting at 30 for kindergarten. We're sitting at, let's see. We have two classes of 25 and 26 in first grade, two classes of 24 and 27 in second grade. Third grade has two classes of 25 and 26. Fourth grade has two classes of 28. Fifth grade has two classes of 24 and 25. The schools that they were looking to send us out to upon consolidation, which we're still not off the chopping block of being taken out of consolidation in the year 2024. The other schools are sitting at 28 and 29. That's Northview. Perrywood has grades, has levels of 25 to 30 in all the grades. But looking and considering the new developments in town, we were told on two different occasions that they were not taken into consideration, and then on the back end, we were told they were taken into consideration. So just trying to see how could that be when the numbers don't add up. One of the developments that is already underway already has residents in the dwelling, which is Amber Ridge. They have 198 units. Out of those 198 units, there are 15 that are already listed for school-age kids. 13 of them are already attending Prince George County Public Schools, and 11 of them are attending Pointer Ridge Elementary School. So the projection, according to some estimates and the statistics, show that Amber Ridge would produce 144 students, South Lake would produce 613 students, Mill Branch would produce 226 students. That's roughly 983 incoming Prince George County Public students that are actually in District 4. So how are we truly going to address overcrowding, and why are they not, the wording and the announcement of them putting it off or delaying it, why didn't they say they would reevaluate it and reconsider new data? So those are some of the questions. My request in coming to here today is that, Mr. Mayor, would you consider supplying a letter for District 4 supporting keeping our school open, something in writing from yourself and the clerk within the next 24 hours before the next hearing? We have plans to continue to serve the community. The PTA is looking to do advocacy of cold weather drives, food drives, and things of that sort. But we are thankful to have a little bit more time to continue to be a vital part of this community. But we thank you for your time. So, thank you.
As a point of personal measure, I would like to let you know, because it's no secret, that I even went and did an interview with WTOP expressing as a citizen my interest in seeing Point Ridge Elementary remain here. And I think you're right. There are some questions that haven't been answered and no decisions made. So taking a point of personal privilege to respond to that, because we typically do not respond to any of the public participation, but I just want citizen participation. I just wanted to share that because it is out there that I did that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we will go to our presentations, and we have an American Indian Heritage Month presentation by the Diversity Committee.
Hello, good evening to you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members.
Good evening.
I am Tisha Hillman from the Diversity Committee, and so, as Mr. Mayor has spoken, I am here to present on Native American Heritage Month. So, before Christopher Columbus thought of boarding the Nina, the Pinta, or the Santa Maria, there were people living on the land, now referred to as America. Before the land upon which we stand was called Maryland by King Charles I, tribes of people were living here on this land. And this month, we honor those tribes of people during Native American Heritage Month. These people have been referred to as many names, including Native Americans, Indigenous Americans, and Indians. Now, if you may not know, Maryland was home to many Native American tribes and sub-tribes. Now, some tribes left after European colonization, disease, tribal wars, and unrest between the tribes and the colonizers. Now, there are many tribes. There's not a lot of history on all of the tribes, but some of the tribes I'm going to highlight for further research are the Algonquin tribe, the Anmesix tribe, Assateague, the Chaptico tribe, the Choptank tribe, the Transquakin tribe, the Mattapique tribe, the Mattawomen tribe, the Patuxent tribe, the Piscataway tribe, the Shawnee tribe, the Wacomico tribe, and the Iroquois. Now, there are several others that I mentioned, but for the sake of time, I won't go into all of them. Now, while it is great to know the history of all the tribes, this presentation is going to highlight the Algonquin tribe, the Assateague, and the Mattawomen tribe, as I like to refer to as the Matauman. So in early colonial period, most Native Americans spoke the Algonquin languages, and they grew crops that included what some call the Three Sisters, which include corn, beans, and squash. They also grew tobacco, which was a major crop grown. Hunting, fishing, and trading with other tribes was also a way that the tribes supported themselves. Now, when it comes to the Algonquin people, at least 8,000 years prior to colonization, the Algonquin people lived in the Ottawa Valley in Canada and were very prosperous. The four most prominent Algonquin tribes In Maryland were the Choptank, the Delaware, the Mattapique, and the Nanticoke. These sub-tribes were a coastal people who spent the warmer months hunting and fishing in or near the Chesapeake Bay. But by the end of the 17th century, a large portion of the Algonquin immigrated from the area due to colonial fighting and tribal wars. Now, it's common Native American tradition to live off the land and to use the land and nature and all of its resources, including the power of nature, for everything, including healing. True to this tradition, the Algonquin people were known for trading pelts obtained directly from the hunt, directly from the hunt. And today, the Algonquin is one of the most prosperous and widespread Native American language groups. Now, as to the Assateague, wild horses and beaches aside, the Assateague, also known as the Kickotanks, originally lived on the eastern shore. In what today is known as Wacomico County and Worcester counties. As a result of regularly being at odds with colonizers and settlers, most of the Assateague immigrated from Maryland in the early 1700s. A few of the Assateague moved to the western shore, and some traveled to Virginia and Pennsylvania. The majority settled and assimilated with tribes in Delaware. So there's a portion of Delaware where you can find a lot of the Native American or indigenous tribes. Now, to the Matauman. Now, if you have been to Waldorf, you have most likely passed Mattawoman Beantown, the road off of 301. The Mattawoman were a tribe centered in Charles County, and they maintained villages along the Mattawoman Creek and on both sides of the Potomac. Like the other tribes mentioned, relations were not always peaceful between the tribes and Maryland settlers, but the settlers wanted to ensure loyalty from the tribe. And so at some point during their relations, the settlers took hostages and then employed the help of the Mattawoman tribe to translate during their interrogations. Now, like I stated before, although there's not much information about many of the Native American tribes, and they don't have a prominent presence here in Maryland like they did before, the Native Americans do remain a source of traditional wisdom that is necessary, and we honor the foundation they laid and their contributions to the land, culture, and spirituality. When we travel to these places with these interesting names, make sure that we look up and we take in the stories and the experiences of the people who were here as guardians of Mother Earth. Be sure to check out the City of Bowie website for information on books, activities, and events that further highlight the contributions of the Native Americans. And I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we will now be moving on to the city boards and committees, and at this time, I will open the floor for motions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the council reappoint the following members of the Board of Elections for another 2-year term: Sonia Huntley and Yolanda Jones.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please respond with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you. And moving to Ms. Veronica Fountain, and she was interviewed for the Economic Development Committee, and I move that we appoint Ms. Veronica Fountain to the Economic Development Committee.
Second. I'd like to second that.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. And could you please come forward to be sworn in?
Oh, yeah.
But that's fine. Her she's comfortable. Okay. Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name. Do swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States, and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland, and support the Constitution and laws thereof, and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of, and state that you're coming from.
Office of Economic Development.
Okay. According to the Constitution and laws of the state. Congratulations.
Thank you, Veronica. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very
You
much.
want
I
to get
appreciate it.
a photo? Yes, you mind, guys, if we get a photo? Yeah. just throw it out there.
Council announcements. Are there any announcements for council members? And I would just give the first general one that we all know. If you have not voted, vote. You know, that is a right and a privilege that we as Americans enjoy. And I hope that all of us take advantage of that. No matter who you vote for or whatever you vote for, just make sure you use your constitutional right to vote. And tomorrow is going to be an important day because it is an election. And there are so many people who have given so much over the years to entitle all of us to the right to vote. So I ask that you please make sure you utilize that constitutional right and that power given to you as citizens of the United States to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, any other?
I got one quick thing, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say, I've heard from a number of residents in the past weeks about a few different smaller projects that have been delayed. One of them was a trail connection from Adnell Woods to Bowie State. We had a contract, unfortunately, that failed. So we've been trying to line up a new contractor and deal with a bunch of red tape. We're hoping that can be done by the end of this year, if not early next year. We're also experiencing some delays with the repair of the White Marsh Bridge, which for those of you who walk those trails, you've probably been annoyed that that's been out since the summer. I've been talking with many of my colleagues one-on-one and with staff to see what we can do to try and accelerate that. The city will be performing repairs on that in-house. The bridge needs a complete replacement. Right now, our only challenge is that the workers who are going to be doing that are currently busy picking up all of our leaves. So the bridge is being ordered by the city. I think we either have it or we'll soon have it. And then as soon as we have the available people power, we'll have it installed. But I just wanted to share updates on those two things. A lot of basic things are just not working as well right now. And I recognize that and acknowledge that, and we're going to keep doing our best as we continue to deal with global supply chain issues and a shortage of personnel. And I just thank everyone for their patience.
Hearing none, we will now move on to the city manager report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I have no report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, city manager. At this time, we will move to the consent agenda. I am open to motions.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second it.
It's been moved and properly second to accept the consent agenda as listed. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We will now move to old business. The adoption of Resolution R-5422 for a Category 2 designation and water service connection for the property at 13314 Forest Drive, and this is open for a public hearing as well. I will turn it over to...
Mr. Mayor, well, last month we presented this, and I think Mr. Wolfley wanted us to go back and make sure that we did a better job of communicating with the residents over there. It's a bit of a unique neighborhood. We did so. We sent letters out to them. They received them 2 weeks ago of this, with regard to this notification, and so we're prepared to receive some action on this whenever you're all ready. And Dr. Yin here is prepared to answer any questions, technical type, about what's going to happen.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilman, go ahead.
Mr. City Manager, do we have any issues or complaints raised? I have heard none from my constituents in that realm. Just want to make sure that nothing came through on the city side as well.
Well, good. We're all right then.
Good. Madam City Clerk, do we need to open this again for public hearing?
Mayor, we did advertise it again as a public hearing, so if you just, at the moment, excuse me, I don't have any comments received or nobody signed up for it this
Okay.
evening.
Well, but at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing, and hearing that there are no comments at this time, we will close the public hearing. I will then go to the council and open for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of R-54-22.
Second. I'd like to second that.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion?
No,
Hearing
sir.
none. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We would like to move on to the new business, and we have a BGE update to the City Council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. David Wright on behalf of Baltimore Gas and Electric. I was asked to provide a little bit more detailed information on the storm event of July 12th, kind of how the city fared and what a little bit, just a reminder about our restoration practices. Let's see if I can make this thing work. Oh dear.
He's coming from, here he comes, the sister.
I don't know how.
There we go.
Years past, I just had to worry about being on mute on Zoom calls. Now it's... Is it this button? Phew. Okay. So, the storm that began on July 12th, so we mobilized our storm operations on the 11th with the anticipation of bad weather coming from not only our weather group, but just, the National Weather Service. That July 12th storm was characterized by very high winds, to say the least. I mean, it was a significant event for us. It was the first major storm we had seen in all of 2022. So it was, we got lucky up to that point, but this came and it hit us hard. At the height of it, we saw 149,000 customers out system-wide throughout central Maryland. So that kind of gives you an understanding of the magnitude of this storm. It was significant, widespread damage. So bad that we actually brought in 1,230 additional crew members through our mutual assistance agreements with our sister utilities, because we just needed that kind of help to get the system back repaired in a timely manner. It was characterized by not only a significant amount of damage from fallen branches, but we saw just a huge number of complete fallen trees that came down. Not only did that cause damage, but it also hampered some of our restoration efforts just by blocking complete roadways. So we'll get reports of power out. We can go out and not know about a tree, and so we start to get hung up. So that really kind of impacted us. We ultimately discontinued storm operations and turned operations back over to our control center on July 15th. And then the other thing that we did is that, as we were monitoring the outage map, particularly in the city of Bowie, when we started to see some of those outages total up to around 7,000 residents, we worked with the city to get some targeted messaging out to city residents through City of Bowie social media, just to let them know that we were aware of the extent of the damage, doing our best efforts to get them back into power, and just beg for their patience. So, that's what everybody felt. No doubt it was a significant event, but let's try to look at some of the specific information behind here. So, as I mentioned, 2021, we got kind of lucky, so there were just 18 minor storms, no major storms in that time frame. So in total, out of those major storms, 19,747 Bowie customers were interrupted. Now, let me define this real quick. When I say customer throughout this presentation, what I mean is almost an electric meter, right? So there's roughly, 57,600 residents in Bowie. Well, we don't count those as customers. If I live by myself and my neighbor has 4 folks living in their house, that's 5 residents, but we would only count 2 customers, right? Because I have an electric service, they have. So these numbers might not exactly jibe with, the political kind of demographics of the city. So 2022, year to date through September, we saw those 2 major storms. That impacted just over 14,000 Bowie customers. Almost all of those were in the July 12th storm. There was a follow-up storm in August, almost the same magnitude system-wide for us, but that one, there was only about 79 Bowie residents impacted. So it was kind of luck of the draw. These can be very isolated, violent incidents. So Bowie dodged the bullet on that one, but really took it on the chin for the July 12th. And to date, we have 12 minor storms, so thankfully, we're kind of lagging behind that metric as well. So these are the kind of industry-wide metrics that almost all utilities use to measure distribution system performance. And I want to point out something that's kind of an unfortunate typo on this slide. Those measurements are not based upon hours. Those are minutes. So that duration of outage for Bowie at 816, if that were 816 hours, that's 34 days. It was a bad storm. It wasn't that bad. So that's 816 minutes. So that works out roughly around 14 hours. So the 2 key numbers that we look at on these indices are the SAFE, that very first line, and then the CATIE, that very last line. What this tells us is that essentially 60% of the customers served within the city of Bowie experienced some sort of interruption. That's pretty significant. That just, it's over half the customers that had some sort of outage in that storm event. And the CATIE, that talks about basically the duration of the outage that those customers felt. So that 816 minutes, like I said, is around 14 hours. So, Bowie got hit harder than our entire service territory, which if you were to look at it, you might expect that. But I can say that we saw that there was significant damage within the city. The good news is that we got those outages resolved fairly quickly when compared to the rest of the system. So, roughly, the Bowie residents experienced about 3 hours less average outage than the entire service territory did for that storm. So that's kind of the industry standards that we look at. This I thought would be interesting to look at. So this is the actual count of customers that experienced multiple outages. So, the great majority of people experienced, one interruption, and then kind of trickles down to, where folks experienced 5. So that's kind of a good news, bad news metric, right? Because, people are getting their power back on, but we start to see increased customer dissatisfaction by just the sheer number of outages. So what you're seeing is when you're getting, 3, 4, 5 multiple outages, that can be a function of 2 things, really. One is that we do have some automation built into the system where switching will occur and bring people back into power, but the storm is still active and it knocks them back out. It also means that we're actively restoring people through repairs during the storm, and then people come back into power and the storm knocks them back out, right? So just thought it'd be interesting to kind of get the understanding of the magnitude of folks that experienced multiple outages. And as far as restoration goes, so we really kind of take a two-pronged approach. One is that when we have these major storms, our very first priority is customer safety, medical emergency services. So, police stations, fire stations, hospitals, assisted care facilities, dialysis facilities, pumping stations for public works, things that are critical to, residents' well-being and emergency response. After that, then we start to go after kind of, a bang for your buck approach. What repairs can we make that will bring the most number of customers back into service? And that's what kind of why I added some of this information on the left to give you an understanding of kind of, I think sometimes people think, well, yeah, we've got the lines that run out through neighborhoods and they bring power. Well, we've got a lot more equipment, right, that is susceptible to damage during storms. Everything from the transmission lines, and if you have a damage there, that can impact 10,000 customers alone. All the way down that chain, down to the individual lines to folks' homes or businesses. So we try to really focus our efforts on getting the greatest number of residents back in power in the shortest amount of time. And finally, when we get down to those, those last and final few, that's kind of the hard part, is mopping that all up, because we find then very widespread, sporadic, kind of, little pockets of fewer than 5 people that are out. So it almost takes a little bit more effort to get everything wrapped up and get folks back in service. So it's almost, you get this decline in efficiency as you get towards the end of the storm event, just because it takes more work, more travel, just to get a few folks back into business. So that is unfortunately the reality of it. So through all that, I want to close with this, because when we were going through this storm effort, it's understandable where people are just, very frustrated with their power being out, right? We take it for granted. It's critical to our safety and our comfort. And I think sometimes, working in the utility, we kind of hear when people are dissatisfied, right? Nobody wants to be without power. And, most of our employees are also our customers. So those folks are out there working storm, and they're going back to dark houses themselves in cold water. And I'm telling you, I've been there, and it's really no fun. So I think sometimes we just hear kind of the downside. It was pointed out to me that it wasn't all downside, that there were a lot of folks within the city, taking to social media and, kind of, thanking folks for doing what they can to get the power back on, understanding the magnitude of the event, being appreciative of the effort, and folks going through kind of a dangerous and trying job in some tough conditions, and doing it to the best of their ability. So I wanted to close with some of those kind of highlights, and just on behalf of the company and all our field crews and storm response folks to thank the city residents for their patience, their understanding, and their support for us as a company as we work through these events and kind of bring them back up in a safe and timely manner. So with that, Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm happy to take any questions that I might answer to the best of my limited technical abilities.
First and foremost, thank you for coming this evening and providing that information. I would like to just ask one quick question. As we go through and we saw a lot of trees down and other things, how is the process or the investment in making sure that we keep the limbs away from the power lines and those things? How is that process going as you go throughout the city? Because I know that's a big undertaking.
Yes, sir. So we are constantly going through a vegetation management cycle. I believe it was 10 years ago, the Public Service Commission issued Rulemaking 43, which basically told all regulated utilities in the state of Maryland, okay, your approach now for vegetation management will be to trim to a 4-year cycle. So essentially what that means is we will go on a feeder by feeder basis throughout our entire service territory and trim to a clearance of what we might expect to grow back within 4 years. So prior to that, we were trimming kind of just enough, and we weren't actually keeping up with the growth of the trees. So the PSC said, in that, vegetation is one of the primary drivers of power outages. Let's issue RM 43. Let's go to kind of this 4-year buffer, if you will. So that's the approach that we do take. We do come in and we trim to that standard. So that is an ongoing effort. Like I said, each year we trim each feeder every 4 years. But we don't come in like to Bowie just once every 4 years, right? So it's this ongoing cycle. So you will see us trimming vegetation within the city every year, almost every day, in some form or fashion somewhere. The other thing that I'm glad you brought that up, is that in that we were hampered by a lot of trees down. I know we are still internally studying this storm to better figure out what could we do better, maybe with some of the local jurisdictions and municipalities, to better coordinate with them to understand where streets might be totally impassable, to kind of maybe better dispatch our crews to, if they can't get to this road because there's a tree down, well, where can they get to next? So is there any sort of way that we can overlay information from, say, a Public Works who might understand where streets are closed, and get that into our storm center so that we can understand where to better dispatch our crews to make them more efficient.
Good, thank you. Any other council members, any other questions at this time? Councilman Stab and then Councilman Dufour-Wolfie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you taking the time to come by
course,
tonight
thank you.
and chatting with us. As you said, from the numbers, 19,000 customers out. That I think we have, 22,000 households. So that's a lot. It's a lot for us. One quick thing: when you guys first come in and are responding to this particular storm, how are you sort of surveying storm damage? How do you know what customers are out, what debris is where? How are you finding that out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, we have almost a real-time understanding of the total number of outages due to our advanced meter initiative, so the smart meters, right? So when those go down, we will actually stop receiving pings from them. And so we start to get this understanding of where outages are. When we go into a storm response, and when I said we mobilized on, say, July 11th, what that looks like is prior to bringing in actual repair crews, we will mobilize what we call our patrol organization. These are folks who have worked on the distribution system for a period of time. They understand kind of the nuts and bolts. You know, what is a 14.4 kV wire versus, you know, just a house service loop. We get those guys out there, and when we start getting calls for outages and we start kind of isolating pockets, because it's hardly ever just one house out when we're in a storm, right? It might be as small as a transformer that takes out 8, or it could be an entire feeder that takes out, you know, 108. So we get those patrollers out there to that area of damage. They will physically get out of a vehicle, get a flashlight. They're wearing body-worn high voltage detectors, and they literally start walking the damage. And they will go and they do that kind of first line assessment, and they'll say, you know, the feeder's down. It's because of a broken cross arm on pole, you know, 33,792. It's impacting, you know, it's in this area, so we know now that it impacts that number of customers. So then we start to build that prioritized list. So we physically send people out there in the field to get eyes on that damage. That sometimes also cause some frustration, because we will then perhaps dispatch an overhead repair crew. They will go to that area, they'll see, yep, there's that damage, but that overhead crew, then they need to physically walk that line back to its origin at some points, because making that repair and still having further damage upstream, it doesn't make any sense, right? So they typically want to work upstream and then down to the end of the problem. So they have to, from really a safety matter, understand what's upstream beyond that limited damage, because it can be, you know, a very apparent, you know, a pole down, but there could be much more damage on that particular line. So there really is a lot of hands-on physical work that is required to understand the full extent of the damage and get the proper repairs made.
That's helpful. So it's physically people on the ground are surveying damage. I'm assuming in a storm this large that by itself was a pretty phenomenally labor-intensive effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. One of the things that we heard from a number of residents was that there were, you know, they would call into BG&E to get an estimated time of repair. They were told end of the day, and then they were told end of the day like 5-6 days consecutively, which from an expectation management point of view was rough. Can you talk to me a little bit about how those determinations are made when you're communicating with customers and they're asking for estimated repair time?
I can. And so those automated generated ETRs, estimate time to repair, so that's a function of our outage management system. That system takes into account the number of outages we have, the number of jobs that is spurring, and then the number of crews that are actively working on the system. That works pretty well on a blue sky day. When a storm like this comes through, that doesn't really hold up. This storm was so bad that we discontinued the generation of automated ETRs because, to your point, the expectations were being set in completely, you know, sometimes we'd tell them, no, it's just going to be hours, and sometimes the system would spit out, you know, a value that was days later, and neither of those were true. So, you know, when you get into a storm of this magnitude, it becomes less science and more art, really, to tell people when their power is definitively going to come on. The other thing that I think that automated system struggles with is that when we bring in additional crews from out of state, we don't have them necessarily set up as crews within the system, and so we have no way of working them into the automated response. I can also tell you that internally, we as a company know we can do a better job of how we issue ETRs, particularly in times of storm. And we have some active projects underway to take a look at what goes into those numbers, those determinations, and how we might better supply that information to our customers, particularly in times of, you know, significant widespread outages like this storm was.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate any attempts to try and make that more accurate, and I recognize that, you know, in these larger storms, you're dealing with a lot of complicated variables. It sounds like when you're assessing the damage itself, so one of the things we heard from BG&E during the course of the storm was, you know, okay, we know where we need to go upstream to start working on repairs or working downstream, but we keep running into house-to-house situations where there's just a lot more debris than we expected. And we're having to get a crew in that has a chainsaw, we're having to get another crew in that has other heavier equipment we might need. And that it was just extremely, from an equipment standpoint, really complicated.
Right.
Getting all the pieces you need to make house-to-house repairs. To what extent, if you're dealing with a situation like this in a town like Bowie, and your crews on the ground are I assume, reporting to someone up the chain of command that, hey, every frickin' house we go to, we're having to clear, quite a lot of stuff. To what degree does that influence BG decision-making on communicating expectations to customers?
I think part of that was why we issued that specific kind of communication through city social media challenges or channels, because we just recognized that, because of the extent of the tree damage, not only were we battling a widespread event and needed even outside mutual assistance crews, but we were just as dependent on this particular event for our forestry crews because there was so much widespread tree damage. So it was not only the extent of the damage, but the type of damage. So recognizing that it was kind of a two fold issue, that's why, particularly down here, we wanted to get that message out to folks that say, we do understand the extent of damage, and we do continue to try to work as hard as possible. Because, like I said, there were a lot of just complete trees down that we were dealing with. Sometimes, the crews can manage that by themselves. If they just need to lift a limb, they can take their bucket truck and move a limb. But in this case, there were just a lot of trees where we really needed full kind of forestry crews to come out. So, we were also being hampered by just having a limited number of those resources. So we did try to not only reach out to Bowie, but in this particular storm, we even mobilized our mobile operations center just to get that out to some of our harder hit communities as well, just to let people know that, we're trying to bring every resource to bear to get everybody back. And it was a system-wide thing. We were seeing a lot of that similar tree damage. If you look at kind of our system map of central Maryland, there was almost a straight line a couple miles north of Baltimore City up to Pennsylvania, where it was just filled with significant tree damage. And then if you looked, there was literally a straight line, if we map out these events, that went from Bowie almost due east across the service territory. So it was this very kind of concentrated line of weather that just really did some significant tree damage.
Yeah, I have friends that live up in Sparks who reported getting power back long after the last of our residents were restored. So
Absolutely.
I'm not blind to the broader challenges that we're facing. I have 3 more questions, and I appreciate my colleagues' patience. We've had a lot of time waiting for you to get here, so we've had time to get questions from our constituents.
Of course.
I heard from a lot of residents who expressed that after basic repairs were made, they observed in many instances cases where essentially large tree branches were sort of left dangling on top of wires, and many are still there dangling on top of wires, and they're really concerned about that. A lot of residents expressed challenges coordinating between BG&E's Forestry Division and the Power Restoration Division, and kind of getting a runaround that for some residents is still ongoing. Talk to me a little bit about the tree branch debris removal process and what residents can or should be doing, or who they should be communicating to get some of those branches away from power lines.
So typically what you're going to see in an event like this is those crews are going to go out and they are going to kind of cut what they call cut and clear, right? They're just cutting these trees up, they're getting them out of the way, they're making the area accessible to kind of the crews to come in and do repair. They are doing at that moment probably the least amount of work that they can at that time to make repairs possible and move on to the next job because of the limited resource and kind of the critical resource that they are in a response like this. What we do see from time to time in storms like this, and it's an unfortunate occurrence, is that when you get a high wind event, there's damage that's up there that it might not even be seen, particularly in the summer. So you can have a cracked tree, and high temperatures come, it dries out very quickly. And so we get folks back up in power, and then you see some subsequent damage a little bit after the fact from branches that are hung up in trees, they get blown down, and we tend to see a slight little uptick. As far as ongoing kind of hanging branches, I would strongly encourage, if you have residents that are reaching out to you, please email me that, as close of a location as you can. I will get that directly into the hands of our forestry group and have them come out and make sure that that area is safe, because we have no vested interest in having kind of a hanging branch over top of our lines. We don't want people to be without power. So I highly encourage anything that you hear from your residents, please email me. I will open up a priority case internal with our forestry group and have somebody come out and resolve that as quickly as possible.
Is your email in our presentation? It might be,
It's not, but I believe I might have emailed the entire
okay.
council.
I see our business relations person is waiting excitedly. So
Maddie's got my information, and
she's got you on speed dial.
she's got me. She
Yeah,
has.
okay, great. I'll get that from them, and I'll communicate that to them. Related, we have a lot of questions about a specific issue related to 10 feet of a power line. There seems to be some sort of problem where residents are hiring contractors. Contractors apparently, third-party contractors will not do certain work within 10 feet of a power line.
Correct.
Under certain circumstances. Can you elucidate a little bit on that and help me understand what that's about?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a state law that basically says if you're working within 10 feet of our distribution system, that you have to be specially trained to work in that proximity of power lines. So if a customer hires just a tree trimming service to come out and take down an old oak that's in their backyard, and it happens to be within 10 feet of one of our lines, that arborist is legally not supposed to do that work. One of two things would have to happen. They would have to reach out to someone who is qualified. I will say that tends to be very difficult because they're typically working for us. Or they have to, the arborist would have to call into BGE and schedule a time for us to come out and drop that line, make sure it's safe, allow them to do the work, and then we can re-energize the line. So they're entirely right. That's just a responsible contractor following state law.
Okay, so, go ahead.
I apologize for interrupting his line of questioning, but in that regard, is it for any power line, or is it for just unsheathed high voltage?
I want to say it's for any
Okay.
line, but I can verify that. I
right.
think it's for, but
All right, thank you.
You weren't going to get a word in edgewise otherwise, so no, it's okay. All right, that answers that one. Thank you. The last one's more of a comment. A number of residents, you might have heard from one of our earlier presentations, Bowie cares a lot about trees and has a lot of very strong and informed thoughts about tree canopy and tree coverage. A lot of residents have written in that they've observed in general, and I don't know if this is just a you guys thing, maybe some other contractors are involved, but a lot of residents are observing that a lot of the tree trimming that they see performed over time is of the variety that it kills the tree in the long term. Essentially, there's a certain amount or a certain portion of a tree you can cut before the tree just eventually dies. And so a comment that we've gotten a few times is just making sure that as you balance that 4-year vegetation goal, that your foresters, your arborists, whoever is responsible, is just making sure that contractors are trying to cut trees in a manner that's not going to just result in their dying.
Yep. And, some of it honestly can be unsightly, and it really is a factor of that RM43, right? So if you've got a line, if somebody planted, this stately oak underneath of a distribution line, and it's grown up into it, those vegetation management crews will essentially have to cut a V in the crown of that tree. I'm certain it's not healthy for the tree, right? So we do have some further vegetation management information. I'm going to pull that together. I will email that to the entire council because I'm sure you guys field a lot of questions from your constituents. We get that all the time. That's probably one of the main points of contention as being a utility within the community it's the impact on trees and our vegetation management practices. But there is some some method behind the madness, and I can share that information with the council. It might prove useful in the future.
And that vegetation management cycle, you said, is the result of regulation from the PSC?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. So maybe something to take up with our state lawmakers and our PSC reps. Those are all the immediate questions I have. In general, I just want to say, I represented, I think, the constituents that were really at the eye of the storm.
Sure.
I think as we were looking at the outage map, it was like my district in particular. So I really appreciate your patience with me as I ask a lot of questions tonight, and I appreciate my colleagues' patience. I do appreciate the fact this was a tough storm. I had friends all over the state who were dealing with this. It was hard, and I appreciate that you're here tonight and appreciate that you guys are working on this to try and help us navigate future storms, as unfortunately I think we're all anticipating these are going to become more common over time. So whatever the city can do to help partner with you guys to assist, I think you mentioned collaborating with us, having our emergency management personnel communicate with you in real time to help identify areas where trees might be down and roads might be blocked. Whatever the case is, I think Bowie is very eager to work proactively with you guys to help our customers in the future.
We welcome it, and I appreciate your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to say thank you. You're correct in that final slide. There were a significant number of people who greatly appreciate the efforts. We know that it can be both dangerous and inconvenient line of work to be in, and it was no small effort on the part of your organization and a lot of the crews that came in from elsewhere to help overcome that. I think it was clear. One of my notes here is there are two issues. One is a happenstance as to where the storm lands, and it happened to be us, and we happen to have a fairly significant number of power lines above ground,
Of course.
And so that presents a significant risk on our part. And the 60% number is kind of illuminating, which explains why my emails and my phone start lighting up, and why it's so important to us. So I want to talk about a couple of things here. The first you touched on a little bit, which was the accuracy of the information. I understand the infrastructure issues you have associated with automated systems that are just not designed for this scale of a problem, and then you have outlier infrastructure that's not being supported by the automated system. I get that. But I think part of it also comes from a lack of dialogue with the city, and in terms of an opportunity here with the city that is not readily available elsewhere in the county. In terms of we have a significant infrastructure in place here. We have, as a result of COVID, a lot has changed in our world, and we have a lot more emergency management preparation that we've engaged in over the course of time, and we have some pretty significant infrastructure that we put in place for that. We have our own emergency management officer. I don't know if you've dealt with Mr. Cromwell before. And our police, our parks and grounds people. This was a big event for everybody. We had to be out there clearing streets, whether they were ours or otherwise. We were out there helping. We even, I believe, reached out to our friends up in Laurel. I think they sent some folks down because it was such a big event and getting these community streets cleaned up. Sure. However, I'll say this. When I was chatting with folks here in the city, I'm grousing about the bad information as well, and the answer is I can't tell you anything. I don't have anything more. BG is just not answering and helping me with that. And I know part of it is the scale, but I think also part of it is a collaborative relationship, which I'd like to see strengthened to capitalize on the resources that we have. For example, if there's a main street in this area that you guys need to get to go take to have access to, to some line somewhere, our guys can go take care of that street blockage before we take care of another similarly sized street blockage that doesn't have that. There's a lot of collaborative effort, and I think we do a lot of that sort of work. We have police officers. We have a dedicated police force here that is intimately familiar with the community. It is community-based police operations. There's lots of dialogue. The reason it's been, we had the success that we did with communicating through our social media channels is because we have a lot of that infrastructure. People look to us as a source of information.
Right.
And when that dried up, coming out of your organization, and not that you were maliciously doing this, I know you guys are swamped, but when that dried up, that contributed greater sense of angst and frustration for our constituents. And admittedly, I'm not taking on the responsibility of fixing your problems. I'm not an alignment, and I'm not going to tell you how to fix all that, and I'm not taking that burden on behalf of the community either. But I do think that we can more actively work together on these in anticipation, not just during the events, but some collaborative efforts to establish some relationships, whether that means in a situation where a storm hits us and we're in the center, that our emergency management person is in your command center.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
Right.
That there is that level of integration because we are a significantly sized community. It's not just, the sleepy 7,000 people it once was.
Sure, of course.
And so we have a significant infrastructure, and our people, have come to rely on that, and we are unable to kind of reach into your network to share anything that we can.
Yeah.
And so we'd like to be in a position, and I kind of will beseech you to take advantage of this opportunity to work more collaboratively with us in this endeavor, because it's going to happen again.
Of course.
And no one's going to bury our power lines.
It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. And we are still internally studying this July 12th storm for myriad reasons. But one is we want to get some kind of, not only root causes of the challenges that we face in restoration, but overlay that so where things did work well, why did it work well? And I suspect that there's certain bits of information or accesses of data that we might have with certain jurisdictions or municipalities that prove useful to us. So I fully expect to get that kind of those best practices and not only what went bad in the storm, but what went well. And I'd love the opportunity to see if we can't leverage some of those with the city of Bowie and just,
Well, we appreciate.
again, to your point, take advantage. Why would we not want to take advantage to the significant infrastructure that you guys have here?
Excellent, thank you. And as a case in point, we have one of the best senior centers in the state and in the country. It is active community. And when there are issues and problems, it's not just a place where you go get your flu shot. They're an engaged community. We had COVID, and people were reaching out and establishing relationships with people who were unable to come in, but yet we were still reaching out. So when we get into a situation where if we can help communicate to an underserved community that may not have adequate communication, I had a constituent said, hey, if I know what the information is, I'll go tell my neighbors that I know are elderly and who are not on social media. Right. They just they want to know when their power's coming back on, but their landline went down, and that's all they've got.
Yep.
And that's not you or I, perhaps, but that's a significant, nonetheless, part of our community. So we have some resources, and I'll hold you to building that relationship. Certainly, Maddie, I'm sure will be engaged with that, as would Lee, and I'll leave our city manager to figure out the details. But we definitely will look to have some improved relationships on that.
Of course.
So thank you for that. The next thing is just, you mentioned, it's a chance of where the storm hits. But part of it too, I think, is the resiliency of the system. We touched on that. To be honest, I don't recall ever seeing, a storm such like that came through and is snapping poles on 197 and blocking 197. Yeah. What kind of follow-up inspection program do you have for our infrastructure to go through and check poles and other things to see how resilient they may be? I mean, I know you have a regular routine and someone who comes and thumps the poles on a regular basis, sure. But I think after that experience, we may need to double down on some of this.
Yeah, so during times of repair, right? So the crews, when they're making repair, they will go out to a certain distance away from the clearly obvious damage and ensure that nothing else is that, because what we'll see sometimes, if you lose one pole, the sheer weight and tension can actually impact maybe a cross arm on either end. So they will always go and ensure that storm-related damage is repaired, and anything kind of adjacent to it or in the vicinity is also remains in good working order. Excuse me. As far as ongoing maintenance, we do have a regularly scheduled maintenance program where we go out and we inspect transformers, right, because we want to ensure that they're not leaking oil. And while they're out there, they're looking at things like cross arms. They're looking at the actual bolts even that hold that up. We're starting to use more and more drone technology as well to kind of make some of those inspections. So we do have an ongoing inspection program for our entire infrastructure. That's got a regular operating maintenance.
Right. Well, my suggestion here is something a little different. Bowie, the Levitt section of Bowie, built all at once in the 60s. When a neighbor saw his neighbor replacing his roof, you knew that everybody else would be soon replacing their roofs because they were all built on the same day. And so, the fact that his roof is a day older means you probably need one as well. And the point here is that I think that if we had a storm come through and we saw the damage that we did, that there's probably a higher propensity for some weakness in the remaining infrastructure above and beyond, because those poles were all put in at the same time. And I would think it'd be a good idea to make sure there was a added inspection to make sure some of these pieces of infrastructure are not all kind of nearing the end of their useful life, and that we find out, in the next storm next year perhaps, that 3 poles down from where we replaced poles 2 years ago, we've got another couple come down. That would be, I think, a good deal. So I want to leave you with that, I think, and I do appreciate the efforts that you make. I do appreciate you don't hear from me directly, you hear from me through Maddie, and I know that everybody else as well, and we do appreciate the support you provide. And I know that there was a great deal of frustration, and I'm hoping that we can, through our good offices and yours, make it better for our constituents and your customers.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other council members with any questions? Okay, thank you so very much.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Appreciate you coming here this evening.
Have a good night.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will move on to item B, the Friendship Aspire Academy Public Charter School Information Presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Adams and the council members for your time this evening. My name is Joe Harris, and I'm here representing the Friendship Aspire network of public charter schools. I'm here today to, one, introduce you to the Friendship School Network, but I'm here to also ask directly for the council's support, and also in the support in the form of a letter to support our application to the Prince George's County Public School to open an open enrollment charter school here in the city of Bowie. Our plan, and I think if I can get this, let's see, okay. Out of respect of everyone's time, I won't walk through the entire presentation, but I'd like to hit some of the salient points. I'm here tonight to, first I'd like to represent my other team members here. I have Dr. Fong Tran, who is our superintendent of schools, and then I have Dr. Ray Ivy. Dr. Ivy, who lives in Prince George's County, will be assisting in the startup and the development of the school, helping to coordinate some of our community engagement efforts. Again, my name is Joe Harris, and I'm here with the Friendships Network of Schools. Friendship Schools, we've been operating charter schools since 1997. We have over 26 years experience in operating high-performing K-12 schools throughout the country. Closest to us here is our schools in Washington, D.C. We've operated schools in Arkansas, and we've managed schools in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, and in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, as well as Anacostia High School in Southeast Washington, D.C. Currently, we have about 6,500 kids in the Friendship Network that we educate every day. And we offer before, after, and summer school program as part of our general school offering. We have experience operating a variety of school designs that include a STEM school, pre-K Reggio Emilia, IB, college prep, college advanced college online, single gender schools, ESL, and our most recent school is a private school that we opened. It focuses on dyslexia. Friendship, and through its Friendship Network, we employ over 1,300 teachers, administrators, and support staff. We have begun to look at Bowie and opening a friendship school. Our vision is to open up a small K-5 school. After talking to parents, children, community stakeholders, elected officials, as well as some of the other committees, it's really boiled down to hearing from them the greatest need. And that is a school that focuses primarily on preparing kids for the future in education. And that'll focus on STEM, that includes technology, engineering, and we are, and I hope, Mayor, you'll appreciate this because of your son attending Duke Ellington, the arts. Our design will include math in a project-based learning environment. The whole child is who we focus on. And as I indicated, we're looking and proposing a small school that would be a K-1, that would do a K-5, but in year one, we would open just the first grade, K and first grade, and we'll have a slow growth model. We found that in designing schools, a slow growth model is the best chance for school success. Enrollment, again, we're looking at a small school that would include about 80 kids per grade level. We'd be looking at a max of around 480 to 500 kids. The model that we're choosing has a number of benefits. I'll leave this up so you can kind of look at it as I talk about it. But what we found is a STEM model and in a project-based learning environment is really effective when it comes to learning. It helps kids develop creativity, problem solving, and critical thinking skills that is really essential for kids being successful throughout their educational environment. I'm here tonight because I'm talking about a charter school, but a school itself, open enrollment, public charter school, but a school is much more than just an educational center. We're also an employer. We're also a property owner. It's our vision to own property here, own our school, and build a school. We're prepared to make anywhere from an $8 to $10 million investment in the building of a new school or the renovating of either a former school or commercial building here in the city of Bowie. We have our eyes set, and we had an opportunity to tour, and I think Connie, she stepped out. I wanted to answer some of her questions directly, but she opened up her back gate. Oh, okay. She opened up her back door or gate, and we had the opportunity to walk through and look at the property there of the former Montessori school. We think it would be an ideal fit for the school model that we have envisioned for the city of Bowie. The school itself would employ about 100 plus teachers and administrators. It would create 100 plus new jobs. We would also work to support local small businesses that support schools. We also, as part of our design, we've seen how a school can support local small businesses and professional services. So we see ourselves not just as an educational partner, but also contribute to the economic development of the city, as well as being a property owner. And so I hope that I leave the impression when you think about Friendship, one, that we are an experienced charter school operator, but we also see ourselves as part of the overall landscape, educational landscape, but also contribute to the growth and development. I've had an opportunity to really kind of, not just come here trying to replicate the Friendship model, but talking to parents, students, and stakeholders about what the educational landscape currently looks like and what others want to see the future of education in the city to become. I've had an opportunity to talk to several of the members, and I want to thank you all for your time, having more time to talk a little bit in detail. But what I took away from our meetings with the individuals we talked about is that, parents need a choice here. And a school that we're proposing will give families in the city of Bowie an opportunity to, one, tap into what is the future direction the city is heading. We presented to the Economic Development Committee, and what we heard from them is about their efforts to attract tech firms and tech companies to the city of Bowie. In doing so, those tech firms would be attracted. They would look for schools that focus on STEM and engineering. So we think it would fit nicely to have a school of this design here in the city of Bowie. I'd like to open up the floor for questions, but if I could, out of respect for Connie's time, I'd kind of jotted down a couple of answers to some of her questions, and maybe that'll get us. Oh, okay. The vision that we have is a small building. Now, ideally, we have had an opportunity to walk the property of the former Bowie Montessori Children's House. That's that property. I actually kind of was excited about it because the wooded area, the fact that it's respectful of the environment is what we envision for our school design. And the fact that it was a former school fits really nicely. I've had an opportunity to tour the space with the owners, and we brought our architects and our designers. We believe that a school that is the size of about a 28 to 32,000 square foot would accommodate the needs of our school, which would include anywhere from 14 to 16 classrooms, cafeteria, administrative offices. But what's most attractive about that space is really the outdoor space. In our design, in our schools, we are respectful of the environment. We believe kids learn not just sitting behind a desk in a classroom, but also out in the environment. Our schools have beehives, we have gardens, we have outdoor classrooms. So the environment is really important to our overall design, and we will incorporate that into the school design. So that property is particularly interesting. But however, we haven't quite settled on what's going to be the best location for the school. So I don't want to make any commitments of that space. We still got to get to the negotiation phase, but that's a very attractive space. But we have experience in putting schools in former Safeway, taking over abandoned schools, commercial space, and building schools from the ground up. So that's what you have when you begin to think about a friendship school. You have an experienced operator, experienced builder, and you have someone that has the financial wherewithal to see a project start and complete.
Okay.
So,
Council members, any questions at this time? Anyone? Michael?
Yeah, man, my constituents have a lot going on tonight. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming out and presenting. I don't want to take up too much time. I know that you guys are still a little bit early into this, so there's a lot of details that you're still working out. So if any of my questions are a little premature, apologies in advance, and appreciate your bearing with me. Do you happen to know offhand how many students were at the Montessori program before it closed, roughly? I think you said you toured the school facility.
I don't know the final number, but I know it had the capacity of around 400 kids from what the parents were telling us. What the owner was saying.
It had a
about
400
her mother
student
at its
capacity.
heyday.
Okay, so that's pretty close then. Okay.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the footprint of the existing school lends itself well to another school of about its size.
Great.
And we're proposing something that would be around that scale.
Right.
It will require some modernization, but some of the footprint of the existing building would be used in our overall design.
Great, so you're not talking about a significant change to the footprint, so that's really helpful. As far as, when the last school was in operation, that 400 number is way more than I remembered, so that makes me feel a little bit better, because I thought it was closer to 100, so that makes me feel better. For getting the students physically to the school, I mean, you're familiar, obviously, with the neighborhood at this point. I mean, I would get complaints a lot about the number of parents that would line up to drop off their kids and then pick them up at the end of the day. It was a ton. I mean, it was a lot for that road.
Yeah.
How do you guys envision doing kind of traffic management for that facility?
Sure. That particular facility, we had a lengthy discussion about what that could look like. Right now, there is one egress that is in the subdivision, but this parcel is made up of 5 different lots, and one actually dumps out onto the highway where the gun range is on that side. Mm-hmm. We're doing an assessment to see if that could become another entrance, which would take some of the weight off of the coming in and out of that public area. Now, we have, when you're building a school, you have to be deliberate about your pickup and drop off and the traffic. We have schools that are in subdivisions and in residential area, and we've been respectful in ensuring that the needs of the community are taken into consideration. It's our vision to also provide transportation. So you would have buses that would transport, more than one kid, or, which would kind of reduce the number of cars that were coming in and out. But traffic pattern and traffic flow for pickup drop-off is important. And so that will be considered in our overall design as well.
I got to tell you, your answers are making me feel a lot better right now, so thank you.
Well, if you've been to the property, you remember it does have a long driveway and kind of a circular. So if the staging happens within the school building, it would take some of that relief off of having cars in the community going in and out, if that is our option for entrance and exit.
Gotcha. I'm very emotionally invested in this because I was on the receiving complaint for 7 years before, and if residents want me to continue representing them, I'll be on the receiving on the receiving end of all the future complaints. So we're going to be in touch one way or the other about all this. The only other thing I have, this is kind of a more general question. By and large, my intuition based on what I know about Bowie residents is that they're pretty excited about all the above education solutions. And the more that I've looked into your model and kind of your focus, the more I've really been impressed with how you're trying to really think in very real and serious terms about student learning and approaching student learning in a way that's based on like the best pedagogical kind of wisdom out there from 100 plus years of a country doing public education. We do occasionally get questions from residents along the lines of how do you address the fact that our existing public schools need a lot of help? How do you address the fact that existing public schools have significant teacher shortages, bus driver shortages? How do you both operate in that environment?
Sure.
Right, competing, given that there's already so many shortages, but also how do you speak to the fact that you're potentially taking public employees away from a system that's already struggling to maintain staffing levels?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. It's really, education as on a national level, we had to pivot and begin to think creatively coming up out of COVID about how we address education, and that's been everywhere across this country. You've had to be creative about how you address that. One of the outcomes, which has been the number of teachers that have retired in education, which has caused the national shortage. I think many of you may know of the Friendship Schools and network of schools that are in the District of Columbia. We employ over 1,100 employees in the system there. Of that 1,100, almost 70% of them live in the Prince George's County, Maryland, and Northern Virginia area. I know personally of about 50 teachers that live in the city of Bowie. Wouldn't it be great if those teachers were able to go to a school and teach in the city where they live? So we have a pool that we could draw from that wouldn't drain from the existing teacher network here in not just the city of Bowie, not only the city of Bowie or impacted, but also Prince George's County. So we think having a pool, existing pool that we could tap in would also benefit the city, and just, well, have those teachers teaching in their neighborhoods in the community. And many of our teachers have expressed an interest in coming to support, a school. I'll call it forward when we're successful opening up our school here. So it'll be your neighbors that will be teaching at the school, we're hopeful. But we'll also be open, of course, to do an open call for any teachers as an employer. And one of the things that we know that you have to be competitive with respect to your salaries for our teachers. We pride ourselves on offering anywhere from 3 to 5% above what the average or the starting salaries or scale is for teachers. What I do know, I think it's about $49,000 for a first-year teacher. Our salary, if we looked at our scale, where teachers' salaries would probably begin at about $52,000, and I think it goes from about $48,000 to $75,000. So, we look at how we can support teachers. We have a number of programs that are designed to specifically engage and keep teachers in education. Dr. Ivy formerly led our Institute for the Advancement of Teaching, which provides a whole plethora of professional development for teachers, but it also supports teachers in them getting their certification and supporting them throughout their career. So we do a lot to address what is a national shortage, which is teachers. And I think our retention rate of teachers kind of speaks to what we do, and we have a very high retention rate for our teachers.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I recognize you guys aren't single-handedly positioned to solve a broader systemic public policy in regards to education. I do appreciate that. It also occurs to me that given that the size of school you're proposing is pretty close to the one that existed before, in terms of net teachers, number of students who are at the Montessori program versus here, you're not talking about a significant change. So it's not like you guys are creating something totally in a vacuum. I mean, you're filling a vacuum that exists already, and I think that also kind of alleviates some of those concerns a little bit. I really appreciate your coming by tonight. I don't have any more questions, but given this is in my backyard, I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Councilman, did you want to go?
First of all,
Go ahead, Councilman. Before.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. I thank you for coming in this evening and speaking with us about this. I think it's a great potential use for the property, and I'm hopeful that we can see this all come to fruition, because I think it's going to work out. We'll see what all the details turn out. A couple quick questions. Bus service. Do you guys offer bus service through the school?
Yes, that is our plan, to offer bus service.
All right. I don't know what you can do, but if you can keep them from speeding, I know it sounds like the darndest thing, but I get so many complaints about that. So with that in mind, how far a reach in terms of how far are students coming?
Sure. Typically for an elementary school, you have the expectation is kids that live within 2 miles of the school can either be picked up or drop off. And because we're talking about an elementary school, especially for those lower grades, parents are familiar with taking a kid to and from school. So within a 2 mile radius, it'll either be pick up, the formula is, it's either pick up, drop off. Outside of that 2 miles where we begin our bus route.
Okay.
So that typically can go anywhere from 5 miles to 10 miles, depending on traffic patterns.
Okay.
But it is our plan to provide transportation.
So a school of your size would draw from a 10-mile radius, more or less, from the geographic center there, correct?
Sure.
Okay.
And while our plan is to establish the physical space be in Bowie, but we believe that, we would be drawing families from the larger Bowie metropolitan area.
Great, wonderful. I think it's a great idea. It's a great, it's an additional arrow in the quiver, give people educational choice. I think that's a great opportunity. There's obviously a great magnet program over at Roosevelt, and there's also a great summit program here in Bowie. To the extent that you can start feeding students into those two programs, as well as myriad of other exceptional programs in schools throughout the area. Anything that you can do, I think to provide the choices that I think residents prefer. That's great. So thank you very much for being here this evening. Look forward to hearing as we work through the details, and perhaps it'll work out in everybody's favor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I've been quiet all evening. Thank you for for coming out this evening. I really appreciate hearing from what you guys are offering. And I had the opportunity myself to tour the property with Madam Carter and you gentlemen. I honestly didn't know the school was there. I didn't know it was there. And I didn't know about it until many residents and neighbors in the community began to complain about the possibilities of 80 homes going there. That's when it became a concern of mine. I know during our previous conversations, you mentioned relationships that you have with local HBCUs and some more even outside of the area. Could you explain that relationship? Because I did have a question about the teacher shortage. My colleague, Esteve, hit that, and I was very much pleased with your answer. And thank you, Councilmember Wolfley, for the busing and the transportation matter, because that was on my list as well. But you mentioned previously in conversations that we've had about relationships with HBCUs. Could you explain to the public and myself?
Part of our model and our belief is that we should be part of the pipeline for education. One, to ensure that teachers or college students, when they come out of college, that choose to go into education, that there's a pipeline for them actually being employed, getting experience in the classroom. I'll use our school in Arkansas, in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, as an example. We have an MOU with the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. We have become their largest single employer of their graduates of their Department of School of Education. But our work begins before they graduate. Right now, we're getting ready to roll out our teacher-student program that would allow juniors and seniors to get real-world experience in the classroom before they graduate. We have what's called a Praxis Prep program, where we work with college students to help them get their certification and begin to work towards their certification before they graduate, and then work with them within the first 2 to 3 years of them graduating to ensure that they become certified teachers. Our partnerships with colleges and universities, not just HBCUs, we work with the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, University of Arkansas, Philander Smith in Little Rock, Arkansas, as well as we work with or have an MOU in place with Dillard University. If all goes well, we're in discussions with Southern University to begin to offer a freshman level course to encourage freshmen to go into education. Wow. So we believe in developing a pipeline, and really we established the Friendship Institute for the Advancement of Teaching to really do just that, to ensure that we have teachers that are well-trained and committed, or not just in education, but are supported in education. And we're working to restore the reputation of education, because oftentimes the career, education is one of those career paths that, it's underpaid largely, right?
Yes.
And there was a time, and I'm old enough to remember, where it was pastors and lawyers, doctors, and teachers that were revered as the professionals. And we want to see that time again.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming again, Dr. Frank. Dr. Ivey.
Thank you. Any other? We'll go to Councilwoman.
I just want to quickly say thank you very much for coming in. Your program is phenomenal. I appreciated the opportunity to meet with you last month and your team, and I just found you all to be, it would be a great asset to the city to bring your school here, especially to that particular campus. As I share with you, my kids were there, Bowie Montessori, for 10 years, so I'm very, very familiar with the campus. and the property is just so beautiful. Want to preserve as much of it as possible, so I'm definitely in support of, preserving the tree canopy and, of course, with the eagles and as much as we can. But I think it would be a phenomenal space, but I definitely look forward to hearing more and, seeing what we can do, and certainly hearing more from the community and how we can, help. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Mamadi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really, really nice to see you, Joe. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing this presentation with our community. It's been very, very insightful. It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of your founder and all of the work that he's done in the community just across the United States. It's just completely impeccable. And what I love about your institution is that it is very much so locally rooted, and it's not extremely large. And you've had tremendous amount of successes over the years that have really been shown to impact the community around the institutions which you have taken over, and also the kids that have come through your educational system. So I'm absolutely a huge fan. A couple of questions that I have. I did receive some emails from some District 4 residents, and I want to spend some time amplifying some of their concerns and also asking the questions. You talked about open enrollment, and I think there's a misconception around open enrollment, particularly when it pertains to charter schools. Can you please explain what you mean by open enrollment and expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. Charter schools are public schools first and foremost, so we cannot dissuade or select kids that come to our school. So any kid could enroll in our school. We're open enrollment, public charter school. We would be under the laws of operating a public charter school, where it's open and it's free to all kids.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. And then also another question that came up is how are charter schools, or particularly putting charter schools aside, how is your institution held accountable for the success metrics?
Sure. The public charter school, the Prince George's County Public School, has its own matrix for evaluating schools. We have to comply with what are the charter laws that are within that school district as well as within the state. Oftentimes, charter schools are regulated, and this is my opinion here, more highly than other school kind of systems. So it's highly regulated, but it's consistent with the requirements for accountability, for academic success, financial health, as any other school, public school.
Thank you so much for answering that. Another question for you. Can you speak specifically to kind of the unique advantage that you might have in the city of Bowie, particularly regarding the fact that we have a college here and you have national efforts in trying to essentially help and support the teacher pipeline?
What's the first part of it?
Can you speak specifically to the advantages, since we do have a college institution located in our city?
Sure. The advantage is that, one, you have a laboratory for learning. So by partnering with the university, it's important that kids before they graduate, and I call them kids, but juniors and seniors, before they graduate, that they have an opportunity to be a part of an actual school. And so the pipeline for us is not just about finding teachers to work at our school, but it's also about elevating education and becoming an educational partner. And one of the best places to do that is within colleges and universities that have their own school of education. So we're part of our startup, and part of our efforts have already begun to look at conversations, or, we started conversations and talked to Bowie State about how we can begin to partner with them. Our school for dyslexia is a lab school. And the lab school model is really steeped in that partnership with colleges and university. And we want to move forward and replicate that. So we're not just an independent school building operating on an island, but we want to be part of the overall educational landscape in the community where we have friendship schools. And we have wonderful examples of how we've been really successful at doing that.
Thank you so much for that. Just some of the other things that you mentioned earlier when you presented to the Economic Development Committee, I do want to amplify that a little bit more, mainly because when we look at attracting different types of companies and different types of technology companies to our city. I do think that it's important that we begin to build out a technology pipeline, and since your school does focus on STEM opportunities, I think that's a huge opportunity for the city of Bowie, specifically since that is one of our priorities that we put in our budget over the last couple of years. So I wanted to amplify that. Another thing that I wanted to draw attention to is really just the history of your academy, and really how you focus a lot on extending learning and athletic programs that are outside of the classroom to really round out the whole student. And I think that's very important, because if you're looking at the Montessori location and all of the natural space that's surrounding that school, I think it's very, very important for us to continue to support preserving that, and also seeing how students can spend more time outside of the classroom and really begin to build out their cognitive abilities in that way, as opposed to keeping them in the classroom the entire day. A couple of other things that I want to mention too. This would be a huge investment in the city of Bowie. I mean, huge. It would be completely monumental for our city, and I don't think we've seen investments like this from our public school education system currently today. And I think this is really, really, really important and very impactful. Two other things that I'll call attention to, and I know the mayor's giving me the eye, so I'll wrap it up, are just funding challenges. When we think about our advocacy to really get another education institution in the city of Bowie, we've been met with a lot of funding challenges where there is not adequate funding out there to really be able to support building a new public school in the city of Bowie. And there has been a common misconception around education pertaining to the city of Bowie, that the city of Bowie does not need any resources because of the per capita income that lives in the city of Bowie, and there are more poverty-stricken areas within the state of Maryland that might need these types of institutions more, which I completely and wholly disagree with. So I think having something like this would bring resources and bring that opportunity and bridge that gap that we've been facing for so many years, to be able to bring another option for parents and for students that incorporate different types of learning models. When you hint on dyslexia, that is huge. That's completely huge. And we see it deeply in the workforce on how it deeply affects students differently, and how they're not supported adequately in the system. And so I think with that specialization that you have and all of the other wonderful things that you've mentioned here today, I think it does support a number of different challenges that we've been facing. And I would 100% be happy to support the letter to the county to support the invitation of your application to the system. Now, I just want to clarify for those here tonight, to support an invitation to application does not guarantee that the application will be approved. It is to allow Friendship Aspire Academy to be included in the process of having their application evaluated to be able to come to the city of Bowie. So it does not guarantee an outcome. It just potentially amplifies them being invited to the actual application process, which I do believe they should be a part of and should be equally considered amongst all the other charter schools that are applying to be in Maryland. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much to your team for coming out.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. Any other comments or questions from the council?
I did have one question, Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry. I mean, Councilwoman Endeavor Madu she so eloquently put it all there, and I 100% agree with you completely. So well-spoken and just eloquent. My question is, I know you offer 12th grade graduating seniors. My question is to you, how many of those graduates go on to college? And I do know college isn't for everyone, because I always say that, you know, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, they make great money. I had a plumber at my house a few weeks ago. It was $800, okay? Thank God I got a friend like Ingrid to pay for it. So anyhow, but with that being said, how many of your students do go on to college?
Sure. Across our network, and I'm really proud of this, we have a 100% college acceptance rate. And that acceptance rate is what we see as the first step to getting to college. And that is beginning in the 11th grade. Not only do we prepare kids for the SAT and the test to get into college, but we also work with them to get college acceptance. So by the time a kid is graduating or in their last semester, they have in their hand one or more letters to go to college. That begins to set the tone and tenor for it. Now, we have about a 96%, we have a 96% graduation rate. 97% graduation, high school graduation rate, and we have about a 96% college acceptance or going to college rate, which is very high. Our motto is that we support our kids to and through college. We have secured more than $5 million in scholarships for our kids. We have a whole system and team in place that supports kids going to and through college. That's part of our larger design. Now, I know I'm here today and I've been talking about an elementary school, but as we begin to look at the needs of the city of Bowie, our model is designed to be a K-12. But we're going to start with the elementary school, and as there is a need, we would be open to expanding to the upper grades.
At another location. Yes, okay, I like that. And Bowie.
But we also heard that there is a need for additional classroom seats at the high school level.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Definitely so. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And my last question is. Very last question is just a little trivia. Where yourself? Where are you all graduates from? I just want to know.
Oh, I'm Florida A&M. I'm a Rattler.
Oh, you're a Rattler. Okay. Dr. Ivy, Dr. Tron? LSU?
University of Michigan and UC.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any Greeks?
Yeah. Huh?
Any Greeks? Oh, okay. A new. Okay.
Uh-oh.
And yourself?
I'm sorry. I'm an alpha. I'm the first and, one of the larger.
Here that's an alpha.
There you go.
There you go. And our mayor here is an Omega.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
That just seems natural, right?
We got to have that Greek collective.
Thank you for the trip. Thank you all for coming out this evening.
Hey, thank you so very much. I think we're done with questions. Anything else? Hearing none. Thank you again so very much.
Mr. Mayor, do we need a motion?
Support.
Only if you choose to. And
Okay.
Mr.
it could
Mayor,
just be us agreeing to do a letter.
Yes.
We don't necessarily have to have a
No,
motion.
the mayor said we need a motion. I'm sorry, the city manager said we need a motion.
We have to have a motion, Wilder?
We need to give a
City
direction.
manager?
Yeah.
Are there 4 people consistent? Yes, sir.
Yes, definitely. We all consistent, unanimous.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
good.
you very much.
Thank you all.
Congratulations.
Thank you for coming out. Congratulations.
All right, we will now move on to item C, the adoption of Resolution 5722 regarding the CAPER for fiscal year 2022. Turn it over to city staff.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm George Jones, Grants Manager, and I'm here tonight to present to you the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for fiscal year 2022. This report is for the year 4 of a 5-year plan, which was approved by the Department of Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Program. The report identifies our expenditures and program accomplishments for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Throughout the past fiscal year, the Office of Grant Development and Administration has performed grants administration activities that included grant research, grant writing, grants management, and review of rules and regulations, along with policy and procedure training. The Grants Office has assisted in housing and community development activities such as home buyer assistance, low-income water assistance, homeowner displacement, and fair housing administration, housing rehabilitation, and work with our community partners on various other initiatives like response to homeless services and related assistance depending on the residents' needs. For fiscal year 2022, the HUD CDBG grant funding was twofold. One was the HUD entitlement, which was $196,485, and the CARES Act funding, which was $209,800. The Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report outlines all the statutory requirements that were achieved and the program activities that have taken place during the fiscal year. For fiscal year 2022, these programs were the Single Family Housing Rehab Program, which was designed for low-mod income homeowners. We received 15 applicants, well, we awarded 15 applicants grants of $10,000 each for energy efficiency-related upgrades. Also, we did fair housing training. During Fair Housing Month on Wednesday, April 20th, the city hosted an online presentation presented by Manuel Ochoa of the Ochoa Urban Collective on fair housing laws, rights, and organizations that can assist with fair housing violations. 30 people attended the online training, including city and county staff and interested members of the general public. Workforce training was another program. The program provided training to 48 residents between the ages of 15 to 25 years old. Training topics included life skills, STEM and innovation, and entrepreneurship. CARES Act funding. In response to the COVID-19 outbreak, we provided emergency rental assistance, approximately $157,000, food relief, $48,000, and personal protective equipment, $4,000. Having satisfactorily completed all the requirements, inclusive of public hearings, advertising, community outreach, we ask that you approve Resolution R5722, the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for fiscal year 2022, so it can be submitted to HUD for their review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have to open the public hearing on this. Any comments?
No, Mayor, no comments were received, and no one signed up this evening.
We will now call a close to the public hearing. Any comments, questions from council?
So moved.
So moved. Okay.
Unless you would like to so move it.
Well, I'd like to move to approve Resolution R-57-22, adopting the Housing and Community Development Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Plan, CAPER.
Seconded.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call them for the vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We will now move to item D, the adoption of the emergency ordinance 0522. I will turn that over to city staff as well.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is H. Byron Matthews, the Finance Director for the City of Bowie. I'm here this evening on behalf of City Manager Al Lott to provide a supplemental budget ordinance for emergency repair. The city's code requires us to have monies in place before spending, which is a good practice and is made available for the Finance Department to ensure that projects are funded adequately. The emergency procurement for Ross Contracting is for the repair of a collapsed sewer at Violet Wood Place, Bowie. It is a 8-inch sewer line unexpectedly that collapsed, which caused a sanitary overflow in an adjacent stream and a tributary to the Patuxent River. We're estimating that the repair of this will be $154,000 with a 20% contingency The supplemental budget ordinance is in the amount of $184,800, which we believe will cover this repair. And then since this expenditure was not included in the FY23 budget, we're here this evening to ask your approval for its inclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. At this time, we will be looking at Emergency Ordinance 0522. I will open a public hearing at this time. Are there any comments?
No, Mayor, there's no comments received and no one signed up to speak this evening.
Okay, thank you. I will declare the closed at this time, the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to adopt Emergency Ordinance O-5-22.
I second that.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, quick
Go ahead.
question. From the standpoint of city staff, do we have any expectation that this may be a growing problem? Is there any other areas that may be susceptible to the same failure?
Well, we believe this was an isolated situation, Mr. Wolfley, but we're all constantly inspecting our lines. They are old, but we believe this is an isolated situation.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mr. City Manager, along those lines, are there any other issues that we face because of this sewer failure, i.e. environmentally or anything at this
Well,
point?
we reported the sewer breach in accordance with the state and federal laws to the higher authorities, and we are demonstrating our ability to repair it by this action. So we're in compliance with all the laws associated with this.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Byron, could you just share again what the total cost would be to repair, please?
Yes, Councilwoman Harrison, it's $154,000, but we have programmed another 20% contingency based on what we may find for this project. So the total amount will be $184,800. Should the project come in less than the 184, those remaining funds will be returned to the fund balance for the water and sewer fund.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We will now move on to the adoption of Resolution R5922, waiving the competitive bidding requirements. I would now open it. I don't believe we need to open a public hearing. We just did that, so I would be open to a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move the council adopt R-59-22.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Harrison, second.
Thank you, Councilman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to closed session under statutory authority of the Maryland Annotated Code, General Provisions, Article 3-305B7, to
Second.
consult with counsel to obtain legal advice.
Seconded.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I would like to say, before we go, Happy Veterans Day. As it approaches to all of our veterans, we thank you for all your service and all the sacrifices, not only of you, but of all your family members as well. I would also just like to generally thank the citizens for participating, as well as the council and the city staff for the great work they always do. Everyone, please have a safe and good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.